Coming at you on today's Philadelphia 76ers. Now, we're going to look ahead at two potential rumored trade targets for the Sixers now that James Harden has finally been traded. Now, we covered this breaking news yesterday. If you want to go back and watch that show, feel free to do so and support the channel. First, though, if you're relieved that this James Harden drama is finally over, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. It's refreshing for this organization. It's the most excited that I've been as a Sixers fan in a couple of years. And what's hilarious is that there's this clip now circulating on Twitter of Harden walking into the Clippers locker room. It is very, very awkward. Terrence Mann doesn't even look excited that Harden is now a Clipper. It's no longer our problem to deal with. Hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. So I want to start off with this. And I think that in the midst of this conversation, this is very important to note here, that the Sixers believe that the 2 first-round picks, second-round picks, and the pick swap that they receive for the Beard will give them a chance to go after another high-level guard to put with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey per Adrian Wojnarowski. Now, I don't think that it's only going to be a guard because I don't think Philadelphia is limiting itself to just guards. If there's a really good wing out there, you go and get a wing. If there's a really talented player that you can net back with that pick capital, then you do it. What's also lost in this conversation is the fact that Philadelphia is going to open up between $50 and $65 million in 2024 NBA free agency if they don't make any other moves to bring a player in. So this organization, for the first time in a long time, especially with how Tyrese Maxey is a blossoming superstar, Joel Embiid in the midst of his prime, is set up nicely and potentially set up the best that they've been in a few years here. Now, as part of this conversation with Harden now being gone, we shift to this. Like, what is the 76ers starting lineup going to be? Is it going to be Tyrese Maxey, De'Anthony Melton as your starting backcourt like it's been with Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris? And then who starts at kind of that wing spot opposite of Tobias Harris? Is it going to be Kelly Oubre Jr.? It makes sense from a numbers standpoint, but I love the scoring punch that Oubre brings you off the bench and the fact that he's been a willing defender. So this is one iteration of a potential starting lineup for the Sixers. Another one could be this. If you want to have a stretch 4 in that lineup because P.J. Tucker was your 4 previously, then you go with Nicolas Batum, who is certainly at the back end of what has been a very successful career. Why I would flirt with this idea, a floor-stretching 4 who can play down low but is a really good marksman with that corner 3. And then outside of that, the other 4 players are what we've seen from Nick Nurse up to this point. And then you could also go with this. If you want that 3-and-D player in Rocco, Robert Covington, Tobias Harris will have to play the 4, maybe out of position there. He has been willing to guard some other 4s, but this would certainly be an interesting lineup combination with Maxey, Melton, Covington, Harris, and Embiid. I'm very interested to see what Nick Nurse is going to do on Thursday. You could even go Morris in that 4 spot as well. And then you go back to this. Projected practical cap space going into next offseason for Philadelphia. James Harden off the books, Tobias Harris off the books, and then the other expiring contracts, which we'll get to. The Detroit Pistons are an awful basketball team. They should have $88 million in cap space to lead the NBA because that roster is awful. Philadelphia, though, is set up nicely, in my opinion, because they're a contender right now, a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference with the ability to add to the roster with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. Sixers expiring contracts going into next offseason, they're going to offload so much money. And the free agency crop is actually pretty enticing for Philadelphia. You have Tobias Harris, Marcus Morris, Nicolas Batum, Robert Covington, De'Anthony Melton, Furkan Korkmaz, who reportedly wanted to be involved in that Harden trade. He was shut down once again for like the 5th time. I joke, but not really. Daniel House, Patrick Beverley, Kelly Oubre Jr., and then you have Kenyon Martin Jr. as well. And then the Sixers draft capital moving forward. 2024 first-round pick. You have that 2024 Clippers second. You have a second-round pick from the Knicks in 2024. 2025 first, top 6 protected. 2026 first, top 4 protected. If 2025 first is not conveyed, you have that Clippers first in 2026, 2027 first, 2028 first, 2028 first, and then you have that 2029 second. So not only are you set up with some of the most cap space in the NBA, and you can use that in free agency next year, you can use these draft picks at your disposal in the future as well, or you can use these picks, at least some of them, as well as some of the expiring contracts on your roster right now to make an in-season trade this year after you kind of survey the market, you scout your own basketball unit, you see if Maxey and Embiid can continue to play like they've played in the first 3 games of the season, and if you need to add to this roster this year to fortify your team to try to chase that championship, you can do that as well. The key aspect or aspects of this trade, Sixers now have the assets to make a big splash trade at the deadline for another star, or they can be equipped, load up the chamber, and they can really have a lot of assets at their disposal going into next offseason, which is a great spot to be in. Look, when you're running a business, whether it's Apple, Microsoft, Chat Sports, whether it's an NBA organization, a professional sports organization, you want to set yourself up with as many resources as possible, as many assets as possible, and that's what Daryl Morey is doing right now. Also interesting that reportedly Joshua Harris kind of had to step in after getting some pressure from the NBA to get this deal done as well. But overwhelmingly, everybody that I've kind of talked to from the national media types that I've seen talk about this, they think that the Sixers overwhelming winners in this trade with the Clippers. Now with that, we tee up our poll question for today's show. Will the Sixers make a big move at the trade deadline? Y for yes or N for no? Because what we're about to get into, talking some Zach Lavine and OG Anunoby, because that's coming up next. 2 rumored trade targets for Philadelphia. Before we dive into all of that, though, dive into Prize Picks. And if you want to tail myself and producer Chip with our picks, you could do that. PrizePicks.com/CLNS, the largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America. You pick 2+ players. You choose more or less on their projected stat lines. And here's some of the picks that we really like for some NBA action. OG Anunoby, more than 14.5 points. For Chet Holmgren, more than 20.5 points, rebounds, and assists. And then Zach Lavine, more than 33.5 points, rebounds, and assists. He did have that 50-burger with no assists the other night, but we're feeling pretty confident with that. It makes game day or game night even that much more exciting. And now you can combine NFL picks and NBA picks. $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS. We're going to put that link down below in the comment section and in the description of this video. So we're going to get to this report from Chris Mannix, pretty well-known and well-trusted NBA insider, talking about 2 trade targets for Philadelphia. And those 2 players, pretty intriguing for a lot of Sixers fans out there. Zach Lavine, OG Anunoby, 2 of the names to watch for Philadelphia. With Zach Lavine, he was a rumored trade target if Chicago is going to be interested in James Harden. That team is awful right now. They could look to rip it down, build it back up, and in trading away Zach Lavine, who's under contract for the next couple of years, he becomes a very enticing trade asset because of his ability to put the biscuit in the basket. And then OG Anunoby, you kind of have that connection and that level of communication between Nick Nurse and the Toronto Raptors, and OG Anunoby, very good 2-way player. For Lavine, he's kind of a 1-way player. In the Olympics a couple of years ago, we saw Zach Lavine defend at a really high level. Coach Mike Krzyzewski was able to get a lot out of him. But at the NBA level, really seems as though Zach Lavine is just honing in on his offensive game. And speaking of offense, this guy can score it. He can pour it up. I'm not sure what the on-court fit would look like with Maxey and Embiid playing like they are right now offensively. Would Lavine and Tobias Harris clash a little bit? But his advanced shooting numbers, very, very solid player. Last year on catch-and-shoot opportunities from 3, 41.5%. Pull-up three-pointers, not great at 34.2%. less than 10 feet inside the hoop, 62.7% on his field goal opportunities. So he has the athleticism to get to the cup, but also finish at the cup. And I saw this trade on Twitter from Aiden Laporta, who puts out some good stuff, covering the Sixers and just being a big Sixers fan. And obviously, this is a mouthful here and a lot to digest with this Sixers trade idea, where the Sixers would get Zach Lavine, Alex Caruso, Andre Drummond. The Bulls would get Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, Nicolas Batum, Furkan Korkmaz, KJ Martin, and Jaden Springer. So a lot of those players, obviously, some of the chips that you got back from the Clippers that you then flip, and then you include Jaden Springer in there, who could give Chicago potentially a two-way guard. And then the Bulls also receive that 2026 first, the worst among the OKC and Clippers picks, a 2028 Clippers first, and then a pick swap, 5 second-round picks. That is a lot to take in. It does work when you put it into the trade machine, and it helps out all teams involved for different reasons. Win-now team, get some win-now players. Joel Embiid, able to get a good backup big with Andre Drummond here. You get a good defensive guard with Alex Caruso. You pair Caruso and Patrick Beverley as some defensive stalwarts and some dogs. Woo, 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 woo! And then you get Zach Lavine as that offensive piece, and then the Bulls able to really just start that rebuilding process to a certain degree. So would you make this trade? Type trade, type pass. Let us know down below in the comment section here. We always appreciate your basketball intellect because Sixers fans are smart, and we obviously love to hear from you in the comment section as well. As for OG Anunoby, certainly a different player as compared to Zach Lavine. He has really grown into a much better offensive player, as evidenced by the numbers here on your screen, where in 2019-2020, he goes up from 10.5 points per game. The following year, almost 16, 17. Last year, he's up just shy of 17 points per game. The growth of his game has been really impressive, where when you look at the field goal numbers, like they've gotten a lot better with more playing time, with more volume and shot opportunities. And how about those three-point numbers? With more shots, he's been able to connect, and he's a much, much, much better defensive player as compared to Lavine, and a much more willing defender. Producer Chip and I were talking, like, we might rather go OG Anunoby because of the two-way impact, because of the defensive ability, but he's not going to demand the basketball as much as a guy like Zach Lavine and take the ball away from Maxey and Embiid, which I think could cause some problems that we saw come to the forefront with James Harden. And then the advanced numbers here, pretty good. Catch and shoot, he'd have to be asked to do a lot of that. With the playmaking being in the hands of Tyrese Maxey, you still want to get Tobias Harris involved, 40.5%. Less than 10 feet. Finishing, 57% clip. Left corner, 46.7%. That's a spot where P.J. Tucker got a lot of open looks. You put Anunoby in that spot. He's able to connect there. Right corner, still almost 43%. And then deflections, because he can get his arms in the way of passing lanes, third most in the NBA last year at 241. Very versatile defender that can play well off ball and not need the ball as much as Zach Lavine. 39.6% on his threes in his career in the NBA playoffs. Sample size not bad there. 27 games played. And so far this year, numbers down a little bit. Banged up, didn't play against Philadelphia over the weekend. 13.7 points per game, 4 rebounds. But the field goal percentage, good, 48.5%. Unfortunately, though, the three-point numbers not good. But 2 steals per game, more than 1 block. That would suffice. So if you could pick a player for the Sixers to trade for, to flip some of those assets they got back for the Los Angeles Clippers, who would you go with? ZL for Zach Lavine or OG for OG Anunoby? I think the Sixers here do have an opportunity that they cannot waste. And like I said a little bit earlier, I'm really excited about the Sixers right now. And it's been a little while since I could say that because they've inflicted so much pain upon me throughout my entire lifetime with all of the playoff chokes, not reaching expectations, not being able to get out of the second round since I was 9 years old in 2001. It has been far too long in a city that's had a lot of championship-level success. Hasn't always resulted in titles, right? But the Eagles have won a Super Bowl in my lifetime, and they've been to 3 now in my lifetime. The Philadelphia Phillies have been to 3 World Series. They've won 1 and just made it to another NLCS. Can the Sixers finally capitalize on this great opportunity and now having a young superstar in this league in Tyrese Maxey? We'll round out with this. The Sixers' new NBA in-season tournament court. The new in-season tournament cracks me up. Like, I personally don't give a damn if you won the in-season tournament championship. It's all about the Larry O.B. to me. This court is the one that the Sixers are going to have at the Wells Fargo Center. It is a lot to take in. Kind of reminds me of an Oregon court, like a red surface with blue down the center. That's pretty crazy with the NBA in-season trophy there at center court as well as in the paint. I guess it's cool. It's unique, but grade the new court. What do you think of it? Scale it 1 to 10 down in the comment section. As always, we appreciate all of you for watching. A lot of great content this week, so if you want to go back and watch all of it, make sure you do that, and content to come as well. And that's why you subscribe to the channel. It's 76ers Now by Chat Sports, and we out.